are enjoying Ditto World 2022, and I would like to thank you for joining me, Amanda Patterson, for my presentation called Funding a Regrettable Necessity, How to Get Executive Buy-in for Technical Communications. So, first of all, I'm all over social media. Please feel free to connect with me during the presentation, after the presentation. If you find tidbits and stuff that's useful to you, please by all means share them, tag me, mention me. I'd love to continue this conversation. So I am the Technical Communications Manager for Hunter Douglas. Hunter Douglas is a world-leading luxury window coverings brand, and as such, we operate in the consumer goods manufacturing sphere. And I am also the programs manager for the Rochester, New York chapter of the Society of Technical Communications. I have a PhD in comparative literature, and my specialization is science fiction. My dissertation was on the human experience of the future and really looking at where consciousness can begin and end in biological beings and in machines. So I do spend some time wondering if I am a conscious robot or not, and but we can talk about that offline too. In a previous career, as I was going through grad school, I was a college writing instructor, and where all of my lit peeps were very much into teaching literature, I really fell in love with teaching writing specifically and really getting into the researched argument and finding the clearest, most precise ways to communicate information, which, as I'm sure everybody in the audience can figure out, very easily lent itself to actually going into a career in technical communications where I am no longer teaching writing as much, although I do enjoy mentoring and bringing up my junior staff. But I'm actually doing the writing for myself. And my background is firmly in manufacturing. I love to kind of get my hands on things and build stuff. I write a lot of procedural information for just putting stuff together, taking it apart, very hands-on, very tactile, and haven't really gotten into the software, but do not let that stop you from continuing on with my presentation. Everything in here is really about how to pitch new ideas to executives and how to get them to invest in technical communications, regardless of whether you're in manufacturing or in the software industries. So this really gets me into, what's my story? Why am I here talking to all of you nice folks? And my journey to get AEM Guides funded really started 2 years ago when I joined Hunter Douglas. I joined a team and quickly took over a team that had a history of a little bit of mismanagement and a history of being in a fairly typical manufacturing setting where tech comm was acknowledged as a necessity, that you should not just send consumer goods out into the world with no documentation on how to use them or install them or clean them and care for them or anything like that, and acknowledge that our products are manufactured using very large, very powerful, very dangerous equipment, and our Hunter Douglas folks deserve to be protected and deserve good documentation to do as much as we can to prevent accidents and to make sure that we can produce extremely high quality product, as much of it as fast as we can. So I kind of came in with executive leadership really asking, do we really need tech comm? Do we really need this bespoke group of humans to generate all of this documentation? Is there another way that we can do it? Is there other groups that might be able to take this over? And within 18 months or so, I really changed that conversation to, what do you need from us? From the executives asking me what I need to make tech comm happen. In this interim, we took on a lot more work. We stopped a revolving door of contractors. We took on the work of 8 people and only added 2 heads. And a lot of this is owed to all the fabulous functionality that you find in AEM guides. So how did I make this happen as somebody new to the team, new to the company, and to get such a 180 turnaround on executive conversation? My foundational approach I got out of a TED Talk I saw years ago by Linda Cleat Wyman. And her TED Talk is called How to Fix a Broken School, Lead Fearlessly, Love Hard. And she is a true inspiration to me, not only for the work that she has done in education, but really how she turned her school around. And one of her mottos or sayings is, so what? Now what? And this guided me because it's what people needed to know to change their perceptions and to understand what's going on in my happy little realm of tech comm. So my first step was to look at my team and look at our processes, really truly understand my current state. My second was to crystallize my vision for my ideal state. What would pie in the sky, what do I want things to be like? Third, I then identified what would it take to get me from current state to utopian perfect vision future state. And the fourth thing was then to sell this grand plan to the powers that be to get it funded and supported. And then lastly is to implement it. And in order for me to do this, and really in that last step of selling your plan to the powers that be, that's really where so what, now what really came into place, because it allowed me, once I identified my, all the aspects of my current state, it allowed me to really communicate why does it matter and what are the implications. That's so what. So what is this current state issue matter? What's its implication to my job, to the company, to the team that I work on? And now what? Now what do we do with that information or that implication? Do we need better tools? Do we need better technology? Do we need more people? Do we need a different approach? Do we need a new process? What are we going to do now? And that progression of identify an aspect of the current state, clearly state why it matters and its implications, and what are you going to do about it? That clear, crisp process and linear logic is what got me from why are you guys doing this to what can we do to help you in roughly 18 months. So let's dig into this a little bit. Wanted to start on the positives. I was a new manager coming into a team. I didn't want my team to think that I hated them out of the gate, because that was entirely untrue. And I wanted to really see, what are my strengths? What am I working with? And I think this is good, especially also for you managers that maybe have been managing your teams for a while. Have you forgotten what the teams are good at? Have you come to accept great skill sets as average because you're used to interacting with those folks every day? And so really take a good inventory. Where are you just crushing it? What are you doing well that you want to be able to replicate that throughout the rest of your workload? For me, I started with some really good authoring tools. I had Adobe InDesign. It was our number one authoring tool. We have a couple of others, but InDesign houses probably 80 to 85% of our content. And my team was just the most dedicated tech comm team I could ever ask for. Their willingness to work very hard, very often, is just impressive. And I came to this team by being a lone tech writer and, working with ad hoc groups of people coming together who had no real interest and investment in the TechCom projects that we were working on. So to come to this team that will do anything and everything to come together, produce high quality, high quantity documentation was just really a breath of fresh air for me. And once you identify these, you want to start documenting them, because you're going to want to know at the drop of a hat, off the top of your head, what your team's strengths are. And you're going to want to commit these to memory, know them inside and out. Once you have identified your strengths, so what? So what do they matter? What are their implications to your team? For mine, their willingness to work hard meant I was confident that we could execute content migrations, and that we could take on big challenges, and that they would be willing to put in the extra work to learn how to use this new technology. And so then the now what to your strength? What can you do with that? And again, mine was we can take on more work because they're willing to do it and they're able to. These are going to be really critical as you get into pitching your team and pitching your plan and your ask, because people really want to know, what are you good at? What are you a subject matter expert in? And in this, you also want to think a little outside the box. As communication specialists, we're not limited to text, and we're not limited to SOPs. We might have skills for layout, for design, for interpersonal communication, for putting presentations together. We have skills for understanding complex engineering terms and being able to distill it down and distill processes down so that anybody can understand what's going on with them. So really think outside of the box too. On my team, I've got a couple of folks that can sit down and crank out data entry like nobody's boss, and that becomes a service I can provide to the company. I have got a person who is just the sweetest empath, who can sit and will listen to you and will help you sort through whatever's going on in your life. And she just brings just such a warm, calming balance to the team. And I think, where else other than authoring documentation can she be effective for my team and for the organization? So don't feel trapped in just authoring and documentation and procedures, and take the blinders off and really look at what does your team bring to the table, bring to the organization. And then of course there's the flip side to that of where are your pain points, and where are your in Hunter Douglas, we prefer opportunities. Where are your opportunities for growth? Hunter Douglas also prides itself on an innovating entrepreneurial spirit. So we really look at where's the team grinding through work out of necessity rather than innovating a new and improved solution to do something better and faster and more efficient. So these may be things within your control, these may be things outside of your control, but as long as they have an impact to your team, you want to identify them. Of particular interest in this are, especially if you are looking to change how you author, you're going to look for tasks or processes that are time intensive and low value add. On my team, when I first joined, we had how we tracked our project time was in a very old software that took forever. It took forever to input what I did for 40 hours probably took me 2 hours of my life to do that. That's just not a good use of anybody's time. So, and there is low value add to that because we don't bill outside of Hunter Douglas. It's all money internal within. And when I joined, even the shuffling money from one pocket to another was phasing out. So where are your pain points? And then ask again, so what? What is the impact? Well, for me, the impact is that's 2 hours that I don't spend either authoring documents or figuring out what's the next best tool technology for my team. It means that I'm not looking at professional development opportunities for them. It's 2 hours that I could be using someplace else. It's a higher value add. The other weird catch in this is that you're also going to want to fight against any perceived shortcomings or pain points on your team. And I find it very interesting that as, needed as TechComm is, a lot of teams suffer under this shadow or cloud of nobody in the organization knowing what they do and why they do it and how they do it. It's not very transparent to a lot of the organization. So you may have to really look at, well, this isn't a pain point, but people perceive us to be weak here. And what what is that doing? Is the perception that you're not moving out of print fast enough hindering your executives' desire to fund you? That could be a very real possibility. And so you want to look at what are those perceived shortcomings for your team. If you are unsure, you're going to want to, really go outside of your team and ask any of the groups that handshake with yours. So whatever your upstream processes and teams are and your downstream processes and teams, you're going to really want to look at meeting up with them. I have found a couple of things that my publishing group came to me and they're like, this is our process to publish this because we have to redo all of these links. Can you just not export, can you help us out? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll just not export the PDF as interactive and you can put the links in where you want. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So there's the perception that my team is creating a pain point and that we can't change things that we actually can change very quickly and easily. And document these also. This gets me into a lot of the, so what and how to explain this in terms that executives are going to understand. And at this point, you really want to rely on the data. Not in excess and not in repetitive and not in bad, but in good, clean, consolidated data. Know your stats. For this, I look at things like either hours spent on projects or processes. I look at the cost of producing a page or a piece of content. You might want to look at the hours and cost of authoring versus working on any administrative and ancillary tasks. And again, also think about, what's your data storage space and how much is that costing the company? You might be able to get some wins in there too. But you want to be able to show, again, your current state of where these numbers are and, and use that to look for opportunities for you to grow and to improve on what you're doing. This is also really going to help the executives understand where the problem is, where's the time going, where's the money for funding going, and what can we do to make all of this cheaper and more efficient. So once you have your data and you know what your current state is, the next thing you're going to do is start looking at the future. What is your idea utopian TechComm future state? Do you want to be able to take on more projects? Do you want to take on better projects? Do you just want to be able to do the projects you have faster and in a less painful manner? But really come up with a crystallized vision for your plan and the future of your team, and invite your team, to talk about all these things I have done with the team to make sure they're a part of it. But as the manager, I do think a lot of this is a big part of my job, and I want the team's opinion so that I can create a vision that they want to be a part of, not just what is needed based on statistics. So once you have your vision of your utopian state crystallized and documented, then you have to start looking at, well, how do I get there from where I am now? What is it that you need to reach that state? You're going to want to look at what your options are to get there. For me, again, my big thing was digitalization, decrease my data footprint, increase my speed to market of my documentation, increase my content reuse, and really stop doing things manually. So my pitch was easy. I wanted AEM guides. Hunter Douglas had AEM to begin with. That was our document storage system. That's where a lot of my publication came out of. It was sort of a no-brainer for me, and you really can't compete with all the functionality that AEM guides gets you. So do you need that? And then think about, okay, so if they said yes tomorrow and I got AEM guides, what would I need to actually implement it? You might need some contract labor while you migrate content. You may need, and I highly recommend, an implementation partner. I would have pushed much harder for an implementation partner much earlier on. I'm now working on that process now. But you also want to look at, especially within your organization, what teams are you going to need the support of? So you should be thinking about IT. You should be thinking about maybe project management if you need to involve them to implement this project. You may be thinking about customer experience or marketing if you have another group that publishes all of your documentation, and think about where you get your content from. Are there people, subject matter experts, that need to review your content? And really make sure that whatever your solution is, that you have an account for all of those people too, because when you pitch your solution and you pitch your idea, executives are going to want to know, what is it that you need? And you want to demonstrate that you have really thought about all of the possibilities that this is going to touch. It is very rare to implement something as large as AEM guides and it be entirely insular to just one team and not need the assistance of somebody else outside the organization. The other essential part to looking at the future and to defining your path, to defining what your future is and defining your path there, is to connect that vision to your organization's strategic initiatives. And I can't say that loudly or strongly enough. Connect your vision to your organization's strategic initiatives, because that way it demonstrates that you don't only know about what's going on in your happy little tech comm bubble, but that you are aware that your tech comm bubble affects the rest of the organization. And you are never going to get buy-in for any kind of project or software or headcount if you are actively driving against and opposite of what the organization is trying to do. So for me, this looked like really pitching digitalization and ending print. Yes, we have just done that. It looked like applying lean manufacturing principles to TechCom. I could do some things internally without needing other groups in my organization, like streamlining that time calculation process. I made that change and had some quick wins there that gave me street cred with leadership to show I am interested in making changes, and I will take any little change that I can get, but that I need some bigger help here. And I looked at other smaller things that we can do to increase speed to market of the documentation, because again, that built this credibility that I'm invested in changing how we fundamentally do technical communications to make it modern, to make it relevant to today, and to align it with what is going on in the organization. Again, in manufacturing, I am closely connected with our project management group and our product development groups. So I have to be able to apply some of these manufacturing and project management concepts to what I'm doing in tech comm. And that gets me to, once you have your current state crystallized, you have identified all of the key aspects of your current state, you have identified why they matter, so what, and you have identified what you want to do about them, now what. You are at this point, you should be pitching in hallways, you should be having an elevator speech, and you should really be looking at making formal presentations and pitches to your leadership. And when you do this, realize that pitching to leadership is using the same set of skills that you have as a technical communicator. I saw the image on the right is the rhetorical triangle, which I got out of a writing textbook years ago. But actually seeing how content interacts and with all of the players, and how complex creating content is, to really see that, I think makes it easier to then develop presentations that will be effective, because I know that I'm considering all of the things that affect the communication of that content. The biggest and most critical part of the rhetorical triangle for specifically a pitch like this to get support is to know your audience. Know not just the names of the people in the room, but know how they like communication, know what's important to them, know what strategic initiatives they're championing, and be able to tailor your current state, your future state, and your plan to get there to the people that are sitting in that room. If, like me, you are new to the organization or new to pitching to these folks, and you don't know what their interests are, go out and ask your immediate leadership, ask your counterparts in different groups. There's probably somebody that you can talk to that has pitched to this leadership or parts of this leadership previously. You want to find out about what trigger words do they have that will shut them down, so you can avoid them. And you also want to figure out what organizational buzzwords they really like, so you can make sure that you're talking about tech comm in those terms. Of all the types of people that may or may not be in your audience, it is almost guaranteed that they are not tech comm specific. There are very few organizations that have a technical communication reporting structure up to the C-level that would have the authority to sign significant contracts such as AEM guides and implementation. So you, again, don't want to pitch this in tech comm terms. You want to pitch this in terms for your audience. Think about what project managers work with every day. Think about what MBAs work with every day and what tools they use and how they need content presented. Flow charts for processes, huge. Diagrams to show your ideas connected to strategic initiatives, to show flow of your plan, huge. bring in your statistics that you've collected and your data that you have. And my other big thing that I have found very effective is if you are going to be changing anything about the visual presentation of your documentation, have a before and after, so that these folks don't have to think long and hard about what it is that you're trying to communicate, that they can just see what the new document would look like. Before you walk into that pitch, you may also have to do some education. Do not undervalue this step. And this one's kind of here a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have a good place in the whole flow of how to approach this, because you will probably be doing it at every step. But if you're talking like myself, I'm in lower management, needing to report and pitch this to a divisional president, I had to do a lot of education along the way so that I could gain supporters whom my divisional president might actually listen to. And not that he does not value my opinion, but I am, again, very new to the organization. He would be looking to people that he has worked with before to get their opinions, to ask them questions. So it was critical for me to educate my boss, who's been with the company for 27 years, on what exactly am I trying to do with TechComm? What are all the words? What's the difference between structured and unstructured authoring? And why we're doing unstructured now, and why structured authoring is the way to go. And then with that, he was able to kind of prep and prime the pump with our vice president. So when I pitched this to her, she had a little bit of an understanding and the confidence to ask me detailed questions. And then she could, again, prime the pump with the president. And again, we could have a conversation about detail why and how of things, and not get lost in jargon and confusion. So take the time to do the education as much as you can, because this is also a good place for you to demonstrate your credibility and your team's skill set. Okay, my pitch looked like this. And while this, I think folks can understand now, is clearly not my normal style to pitch stuff. I like things a little lighter and a little more fun and a little more exciting and lots of colors. But my leadership had told me that this was a template being used across the organization to make strategic pitches up to divisional leadership. And I said, well, okay, they've seen it and it's worked and people have gotten funding and support. And they said yes. And I was like, I'm in then. It was only this one slide for about an hour's conversation. And my leadership had told me that they had read the slide before I presented. And so that meant that I could just focus on the highlights of how getting AM guides would move my team from our current phase of grinding through documentation to the goal of working smarter before we have to work harder. And, how that would open bandwidth and content reuse and all of that good stuff. So again, I relied on the people that I work with to give me guidance on how to present this information. You should do the same in your organizations, because if your audience kind of has a feel for the format, that's one less thing that they are going to be tripping over as you're pitching your ask. And my last piece of advice is to be confident. Be smiles, be energetic, have an extra cup of coffee that day if that's what it takes. But get yourself pepped up, pitch enthusiastically, pitch confidently. You have done the research. You have identified the key aspects of your current state and your future state and how to get there and why all of those aspects matter and are relevant. So what? Now what? You should know all of this content at least enough to be able to speak intelligently about it, if not off the top of your head. I spent a lot of time kind of working through little pitches in my head. That might be a little weird for folks. But if you are excited about the move forward into the future, the people you're presenting to are also going to be excited about that same move, and you'll get them on board. They'll be engaged, they'll be asking good questions, and you'll have the answers to those questions. And I think that's really what makes the pitch successful. And it is a pitch. I know a lot of us don't really like the idea that we're selling something, but we are selling TechComm, and we have to sell TechComm. We have to make it desirable for leadership. We have to make it a little sexy and engaging and fun and interactive. And you can't do that if you are going to fall asleep or you are just a total bundle of nerves and kind of mumbling about it. So be engaged, be exciting. Wave your TechComm nerd flag high and proud. I'll be right there standing with you. And so that gets me to my now what. I've told you my story, now what? Now what is, it worked. My leadership signed off on purchasing and implementing AEM guides. It took me about 12-ish months to get to this point, and we signed a 3-year contract with Adobe. We're now close to 18 months. We've got some folder structures in there. We've migrated some content. We're trying to figure out how to make it, do everything that we know it can do. And it's a phenomenally powerful tool. Again, I would highly recommend getting an implementation partner to really help get that initial groundwork laid so that you can use all of the functionality of AEM guides. It is a phenomenally powerful tool, and I am very excited for the progress that we have made thus far. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed Ditto World 2022. If you have any further questions or want to continue this conversation, I am unbelievably happy to do so. Please look me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, or just send me an email. It's the best way to get a hold of me. Thank you. Have a lovely day.